to the James Hardy 1000 from Mount Panorama at Bathurst. Alan Moffat in car number 43 leads the grade race, 18 seconds to Peter Brock in the number 25 car. So, in fact, Brock has gained just a little bit of ground on Alan Moffat, which is going to make Moffat's pit stop rather critical.
Yeah, Moffat probably at this stage, anyway, doesn't know that Brock has closed the gap just that fraction. He'd like a bigger gap to be able to get in, make his stop and get out again. 44 seconds, so a substantial gap from Brock in second place to the third place getter, Gary Rogers, just hanging in there and doing a great job. But pit stop time must be awfully close for Alan Moffat.
High pitch whine of the Mazda coming over the top of the mountain.
Moffat just drifts the car in and out of the corners, takes the neatest, absolute neatest possible line. Got to keep the revs up in these little machines.
Down through Forest Elbow, now Conrod Straight. Moffat coming up behind a couple of cars, moves to the outside. We might see if we can get our 7 radar signal near the windsock coming down Conrod Straight, thanks to Ortex, who are providing us with Conrod Straight speeds here today. Here he comes now. It'll flash on your screen. Alan Moffat, 2:51 kilometres an hour. That is very, very fast. Here's Moffat.
Well, fastest man has been Dick Johnson in the big V8 Falcon at 260. There's not much between them. That's the big Camaro up front, isn't it?
Yes, it's the Bergman entry, and we're inside. George Fury's Nissan Turbo coming down under the player bridge. Takes Bergman on the inside. We pan back through the corner, and you'll see the little 4-cylinder Nissan Turbo and that big 350 Chevrolet Camaro run along pit straight.
The gap is now only 15.5 seconds between Moffat and Brock.
Here we go, coming to back with George Fury. And there's been plenty of activity in the pit area today, as Gary had mentioned beforehand. And cars in and out. Alan Grice and the Colin Bond pit stop has put them back on the road, still with quite a lot to chase in terms of time against Alan Moffat and Peter Brock. JPS BMW in trouble, and let's have a look what's happening in the pit area. The Alan Moffat second car has come into the pits. Greg Hansford jumps out of the car as we show you this replay, which has just occurred. Greg Hansford helping in the replacement driver, Gary Walden. That's the 34 car. Quite a good pit stop. Hansford helped Walden into the car, make sure everything was okay. Hansford to go behind the pit wall. Gary Walden takes off. That was number 34. Very quick pit stop, that for the second of the Moffat pit of the RX-7s.
Well, we expect Moffat to come in very shortly, and we'll be keeping a close eye on that pit stop because he is only 15.5 seconds in advance of Peter Brock in the dealer team car number 25. Brock has almost a 1-minute margin, about 55 seconds over Gary Rogers in third place. Alan Grice with Colin Bond actually at the wheel now in the leading STP car number 6, holding down 4th spot. Then Warren Cullen, followed by car number 3, and that's Peter Jansen in the Cadbury Schweppes Commodore. Car number 50, a great job being done out there in the little RX-7, driven by Peter McLeod and Graham Bailey. Peter McLeod at the wheel at the moment, I think, when they change Graham Bailey to take over. The car has been damaged. They've had an encounter with a wall somewhere and have done some damage to the bodywork, but the car obviously still working very well because the McLeod car 50, Slick 50, is up into 6th place in the race. There he is, in touch at the moment, but a lap down on Alan Moffat. Moffat goes through, followed by McLeod. Yes, considerable damage. You can see.
Oh, and he's lost it.
Oh boy, he's going to do a lot more if he doesn't watch it.
That wasn't too slick.
Right-hand front for the car has been badly scrunched. He's trying so hard, I guess, to stick with Moffat. Oh, that was the BMW off the side of the road.
BMW's on the grass at the top of Mount Panorama. And obviously still with those fuel problems. Hello, and one who has creased the side of the Armco. That's at the end of Conrod Straight, just near the sand trap, is in fact Jerry Burgess. And that is the P&O Cruisers entry, the RX-7, that was to have been co-driven by American Roger Mandeville. Like so many Americans, it's unbelievable the number of Americans who come to this race as co-drivers only to never get a start. The cars go out before they're turned over.
Driver out over the fence.
It's going to seem an awful long way from Bathurst in New South Wales to Spartanburg, South Carolina for Roger Mandeville. There's the BMW.
I don't know where he's going. He's just crawling slowly along the grass.
Bad luck indeed, because if ever a car was competitive for this race, it was the BMW. Many of you who watched Hardy's Heroes and the qualifying yesterday, this was one fast car. His Alan Moffat lights are on, the flaps are up.
Next lap, I would say. Moffat, I think, will be in next lap round. New camera position we've got up at the top of the mountain.
Well, it's one we didn't particularly want to use, but that's our race view perched on top of Jim Richards' JPS BMW. The rest of the field flies by. Section of the crowd up there, thanks to Frank and Jim and the boys at the JPS team. We'd rather be getting the picture of them on the racetrack. They're being so gracious in the installation of our race view. And he's got the car mobile again, trying to move off and get it back to the pit area. I think that was the signal the last time around. We take a look at Alan Moffat, the man who presently leads the James Hardy 83. A familiar face, 43 years of age, 14 years at Bathurst.
Four-time winner.
Four-time winner. Top driver and out in front and leading, and we expect Alan Moffat into the pits this time around.
But the gap is narrowing very quickly. He'll want to come in. I don't know whether it's tyres or whether Brock is just charging so hard.
I tell you what, we might just have a situation whether Moffat has eased off the pace, but Peter McLeod has just gained on Moffat. Whether or not Moffat is having some fuel problems, not trying to signal anything, but they just caught up, and Peter Brock is just closing on the pair of them. It's just ripped 5 seconds out in the past 2 laps. So Alan Moffat making it down to the pits, maybe just trying to squeeze in that extra lap.
Frantic activity coming up in the pits. I think Gary Rogers is in car 11, the Soundwaves Disco car. Dick Johnson is back in, or it's not Dick Johnson, in fact.
Let's head down to Forest Elbow. See if McLeod can pass Moffat down Conrod Straight. Moffat, I think, has got the lights on again in the RX-7. That's just to inform the pit crew that he's coming in this time.
McLeod goes by, so
we're waiting for what could be the dramatic pit stop of this race. 10.5 seconds from Alan Moffat back to Peter Brock and then Alan Grice.
Kevin Bartlett in the pits in the 17 Palmer Prudential Falcon.
And there again is Peter McLeod behind. Blinker is on. This is going to be the pit stop. The race leader, Alan Moffat, in the 43 RX-7, heads into pit road. Coming up, he has the first pit bay, which is very, very good. Straight in and watch the crew go to work.
Not only watch them go to work, we'll watch when Moffat leaves, because Moffat has got a dangerous driving charge pending against him. Going out of the pit lane on the final practice yesterday, he almost took another car with him. Let's see what's going on down there now with Evan Green.
Almost chaos down here. There are so many cars. Both of the Mazdas have come in. Gary Walden has brought his car in. He's being sent out again because there's no room for him. But Moffat handing over to Katayama, the Japanese driver. Brakes not on, the car's rolling back almost into the second car. They've got it underway. It's a short stop. I've timed them here for 35 seconds. Moffat has seen the loose grip on the front. He's giving a hand, as you can see. They can't get it into gear. Katayama's struggling. Can't get first. Can't get. Now he's finally got it. And away they they go, and Alan Moffat, with his life support system dangling, storms over the pits. Gary Walden, who desperately needs help, brings the car into the pits. Immediately in front of them, we had car 11 just a moment ago, Gary Rogers. I said to Gary, how is it? He shook his head. He said, we've got no brakes, but Gary has gone out again. Walden having a fairly tough initiation, only done 3 laps since he took over, had to switch off the engine. He's got some sort of problem there, though. The mechanics working under the bonnet. This is rough on this young newcomer. A big chance for him. Working deep there in the rotary motor, trying to cure some sort of misfire that he seems to have. I won't interrupt him. There's too much strain on this young fella. New plugs are going in, so it's something to do with the ignition. They're changing plugs. You can see Gary sitting there. This is a difficult situation for the young bloke.
Just to break in, Evan, Katayama has stalled the car and is just on the exit from the pits up to Mountain Straight. He's got it going once again, but they have lost a lot of time through that pit stop.
And they've got a lot of transmission troubles. We'll be returning to the action here at James Hardy 1000 in just a few moments to see how Katayama's going, and he struggled to get the car around on his first lap on the mount.
Hardy 1000. We'll take a break and then return live to Mount Panorama at Bathurst. Welcome back to the James Hardy 1000 live from Mount Panorama here at Bathurst on the 7 network. Alan Grice has taken Katayama in car number 43 and has now moved into second place. So at this stage, Katayama has it all to do over again after that pit stop where they spent a little more time than they anticipated, and then the car stalled on the exit from the pits back onto Mountain Straight. He's back into his stride. He's certainly hasn't let Grice get too far away from him. They're fairly close as they come down Conrod Straight.
5th place getter in the race, the McLeod Slick 50 Mazda RX-7 in the pits, just completing a change of tyres and a refuel, and is back on its way out again. It looks like Graham Bailey at the wheel as they go out, but I wouldn't be sure of that. They've dropped a couple of places because of that pit stop on the track at the moment. Brock in front, Grice second, Moffat third. Jansen is in 4th place, followed by Bobby Morris. And then car number 12, Jim Keogh. This is the car we saw spear off the track during qualifying, jump the bottom end of the circuit. They've got it prepared and running well to be running in 6th place at the present time, ahead of Fred Gibson in car number 16, the Nissan Bluebird. 2nd place getter, Colin Bond at the wheel. Katayama at the wheel of car number 43, the Alan Moffat Mazda. And let's take a look at a few facts about this marvelous Japanese driver. Been the Mazda driver, rather, factory driver for such a long time and has done such a marvelous job. You may remember when he came here to drive an RX-3 with Alan Grice, 5 or 6 years ago. He rolled it at the bottom of Conrod and ended up in that big sand pit. It was one of the most spectacular things ever seen. He jumped out of the car, hopped over the wall, raced across the track at the first opportunity, grabbed a camera and went back to take pictures of it. What else could you expect of a Japanese tourist?
Katayama heads along the top of the mountain, car number 43. They're placed in 3rd. Peter Brock still the race leader. Well, Peter Brock, after looking so confident leading the race early, only to go out with a blown engine, then to take over brother Phil Brock's role as co-driver to John Harvey, has been able to come back from behind and then now lead the great race, the 83 James Hardy 1000. Automatic timing device for George Fury, telling George his lap times each time as he comes beneath the James Hardy bridge. This is the George Fury Gary Scott car.
And you may be able to see the Motorola sign there. Well, as part of the conditional prize money in this race, Motorola is putting up $500 for the car that leads at the end of each successive 25-lap period. Alan Grice picked it up because he was the leader on lap 25. Peter Brock takes the money for being the leader after 50 laps in the great race.
There's George Fury busy in the Nissan Turbo over the top of the mountain. And our race leader is Peter Brock in number 25, the Marlborough dealer team Commodore, coming up here behind the Weekston Harrington car that has spent most of the day in and out of the pits with quite a few problems. But Brock, after looking out of it earlier, is back and leading. And that's a feeling that Peter Brock certainly knows well here at Mount Panorama at Bathurst. Six-time winner, going for 7 wins this year. Working to the outside of the Harrington car as they go down Conrod Straight. Taking another car on the outside as well. Heading down towards the windsock at the John Player Bridge and down to the end of Conrod Straight.
Very comfortable lead too by 1 minute and 33 seconds. Minute and a half in front. So that's well over a half a lap, about 2/3 of a lap in front for Peter Brock in 25. As we see him go through, don't be fooled. Now that car behind him is the second of the STP cars, number 14, with Steve Harrington at the wheel. Second place in the race actually held by the first STP car, number 6, with Colin Bond at the wheel, about a minute and 30 seconds adrift.
There goes our race leader heading up Mountain Straight again, Peter Brock. Up towards GTX Bend, we'll be dealing with the smaller car class very shortly for you, for all those followers at home following the 3-litre and under class. At the moment, though, coming up to the cutting again, car number 25, Peter Brock. George Fury, who's been carrying race cam around for us, heads up through GTX again. Now the very, very steep rise to the BP cutting. That's pictures from George Fury, but Peter Brock still leads the great race. We'll return to Mount Panorama at Bathurst after this break. James Hardy 1000 Classic, and here we have number 34, the second of the Alan Moffat, Peter Stuyvesant Mazda RX-7s, Gary Walden, the wheel, and ran out of go getting into the cutting and has moved the car back behind the wall. The Kadiyama will see that as they go past. So one of the two cars appears to be in deep trouble up at the top end near the cutting. Bad luck indeed for Gary Walden. A very strong runner in series production racing this year. But no one's going to tell Gary Walden that if he can get a push, he'll even push the car back to the pits. Be a long push, but at the same time, all the problems in the world. They're going to try and see if they can get it started again. Car just came to a stop in that part of the racetrack, looking to see whether there was any contact with the concrete wall or the safety fence up in that area, because they're working on the outside wheel to see if they can get Gary Walden back and running again enough to get him back into the pit area. Well, that's bad luck indeed. 1 minute 40 seconds is still the gap that Peter Brock holds over second-placed Alan Grice, with Kadiyama and Moffat in the 43 car back in third place. Meanwhile, in the smaller car class, here is our leader at the moment, Laurie Nelson, coming down out of Forest Elbow onto Conrod Straight. The Seatons are currently placed in second place in the 3-litre and under class, and Les Gross completing 1, 2, 3 for the Capris at this stage. But Nelson has been doing well. There's trouble here for car number 29, who has just failed to make it all the way into the pit area. That's the Dick Johnson car of some years ago that struck the rock there. And John Donnelly is your driver. They have a problem. Whether or not the engine has quit on the way back into the pits and they can't get it in there. The marshals have offered to push the car out of harm's way because it would be blocking the number 1 pit bay. We're pretty close to it. So there's the Donnelly car, number 29, being pushed just beneath the James Hardy centre and up towards the pits. So there goes
There's our 3-litre class leader, Laurie Nelson, up the straight heading up to GTX Bend. Doing it nicely. The car's been running perfectly all day. And the Seatons, the father and son combination of Barry and Glenn Seaton, as I mentioned before, in second place, with Les Gross and Cant running in third. Still a car that can always win its class here at Mount Panorama, the Ford Capri.
It's been a marvellously durable car, hasn't it?
Through the cutting, and there is your 3-litre class leader at this stage, Laurie Nelson, going through. Might be wise now to take a look at the update of the James Hardy 1000 Hour 2.
Second hour of the race saw Dick Johnson in the 17 Palmer Prudential Falcon, or a car that looks very much like it, in the pits and in a little bit of trouble. Bobby Morris in 4, the Sands car being hotly pursued by Warren Cullen in the dice for second and third at that stage of the race. Johnson hands over to Kevin Bartlett in the big Falcon. The dice continues between Bobby Morris and Warren Cullen. Commodores still dominating the head of the field at this stage through the second hour. Gricey, the race leader at that stage, picked up the first $500 bonus for leading after 25 laps and doing it well indeed. Car 15 back on the track. George Fury in the Nissan Bluebird gave us race cam pictures and seemed to be enjoying himself, although by this stage he was off the pace after an unscheduled early pit stop. Grice in the pits, Bond at the wheel, but on the track Moffat had taken over as the race leader. Having difficulty, can't get the car out, tyres in the way. A car parked in front of them. Bondy finally gets on the road, but it took him too long, and Moffat is smiling. 39 laps down, and at that stage, the race leader. Thumbs up from Walden as he prepares to get into the second Moffat car to take over from Greg Hansford. Moffat, of course, yet to make a pit stop at that stage. Race cam pictures as we see the Toshiba Commodore waves Fury through, and Fury says thank you very much. Well, Burgess and Mandeville weren't thanking anybody in particular, not the fence certainly, nor Jimmy Richards. The BMW on the grass at the top of the mountain. Now Moffat's pit stop. Out of the car, Katayama, Yoshi Katayama from Japan in the car, but by gee, they're stuck, can't get going. Moffat angry, the pit crew pushing, and that wasn't the end of it because Katayama stalled it on the way out of the pits. That allowed Brock to go through, and after 2 hours, lead the great race.
Welcome back, and we have the father and son combination, the car that is presently placed second in its class. That's Barry Seaton and Glenn Seaton in the 55 Capri. Up to the cutting again. This is where the Hansford RX-7 was, but they've managed to get that off and running and head back to the pit area. Barry Seaton, who has been here since day one, 21st race here at Mount Panorama at Bathurst, and on the 21st lap.
Seaton and Son, as we mentioned just a moment ago, those ever reliable Capris. In 21st position outright on the track, second in their class after 50 laps. Outright contenders clocking up 51 laps. A minute 41 is Peter Brock's lead in car 25. Grice holding down second place now ahead of Alan Moffat, but the duel there is pretty desperate. Coming along pit straight at the present time, about to go into Hell Corner and take the left-hander up the mountain once more. Alan Grice in the STP Commodore number 6. Moffat on his tail.
They've had a great scrap. About the same distance back that we caught them a couple of laps ago. Following the cars down, here's our race leader going beneath us. And that, of course, is Peter Brock. Back behind, we have, of course, Barry Seaton in the number 55 car. And this pulling to the outside, the Nissan Turbo that'll pass Seaton along pit straight. 25. Certainly pays sometimes to have two cars running for you, and the choice of being able to ask the brother, Phil, to stand down, or John Harvey. Up towards GTX Bend. There's your race leader, Peter Brock. We'll take a break and then return live to Mount Panorama at Bathurst.
Change. They're making a wheel change all round. They have the time to do it. A second can of fuel going in. Peter Brock adjusting the belt and just telling Larry how the car is, what the track is like. The car's down. That's a quick stop. The screen being cleaned. They're finished. They're on the way. And car 25 out. Peter Brock. That was a frantic burst there. You've got back into the lead.
Yes. The car's not quite right. I'm having to nurse a bit of a handling problem. It's I don't know, and I hopped straight in. It was just pulling to the right. I just learned to nurse it and keep on driving with it.
Was that what you were telling Larry when he took over?
Yes, I said you'll notice it's a bit knock-kneed. Maybe John ran on a curve earlier. We didn't have time to ask him. I'll ask him now. And also the brake imbalance is quite weak. It's locking up the front wheels, very easily going into the dipper, and could very easily be in a flat spot. And since Larry's a past master of flat spotting tyres, I thought I'd better tell him.
Who else is going to drive the car? Will you do the final stint?
Oh, I might do. It depends on the opposition. I'd like to give Phil a drive. He'll order the drive then. Just wait and see.
Well, it could be a four-man crew then driving the car that may well win the race. Still in front. I've got Kevin Bartlett I want to speak to because we've got news as far as Dick Johnson's car is concerned. Kevin, you've got some big problems with the car. What are they?
Oh, we've got numerous problems, Evan, and what we've decided to do, in the end, the electrics went that bad that the battery, we lost two batteries, and first thing I had to switch off, of course, was the Channel 7 camera. Sorry about that. Second thing was the oil pump cooler, and the temp started to go up. Then it was jumping out of gear, and I think one thing led to another. So we're going to change the gearbox, change the battery, put an alternator on, tune her up, and come out again, if only to give the viewers another car, in-car shot. There'll be a lot of cars going past us, so unfortunately we've got brake problems as well. It's just all a bit too hurried, and we just ran out of time, really.
The boys must be exhausted.
Oh, they absolutely had it. Yeah, they woke up a little bit, though, when we said there's a little drinky afterwards. But they're going to do it.
Kevin Bartlett, and back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Evan. Maybe Kevin could go down to the dealer team headquarters. Looks like anyone's going to start down there today. We're back inside with George Fury as we head over the top of the mountain. Working hard at the controls. Gary Scott, rather. Of course, they've had a driver change. Gary from Queensland. And, of course, the main dice, the talking point, the last 4 or 5 laps around the mountain has been the dice between Katayama and, of course, Colin Bond. Bond co-driving with Alan Grice, Katayama with Moffat.
Katayama took Bond under brakes at the bottom of Conrod Straight, a lap and a half back, in the most astonishing manoeuvre. He passed Bond as though he was standing still. It was a remarkable pass under brakes manoeuvre, but there have been people who've said that this is what really cost Moffat a top chance in this race last year, the fact that Katayama is said to be quite severe on brakes. And if he keeps up that sort of manoeuvre, I can believe it.
Well, we picked them up going down Conrod Straight. Katayama, Grice trailing. Really winding the Mazda out. Heading towards the John Player Bridge. Just a slight incline there, past the windsock, and now heading down to the left-hander at Murray's Corner.
Perkins in the dealer team car still leads the race after their pit stop. Katayama second in the Moffat Mazda. Grice third in the JPS. Whoops, the JPS, the STP. And there he is coming through, in fact, right on the tail of Yoshi Katayama. They're the top three. Alex Grice. 4th place at the present time is held down by car number 4. That's Bob Morris in the John Sands Rusty French entry. And then a remarkable job, really, holding down 5th place on the racetrack is Jim Keogh in the number 12 Commodore.
Yes, he's done a tremendous job after the problems in practice. Kadiyama, GTX Bend. Alan Grice still sitting there. They're passing some of these slower cars heading up to the mountain. Moving into the top 20 also is Barry Jones in the number 41 Mazda. That's the Goodrich tyre car running on Goodrich radial, so they've done well to bring the car up into 20.
Amazing story about that car, Mike. They blew an engine late yesterday and had to drop a new one in overnight. They had to take it to Orange to put it on the dyno to run it in. The police moved in on them at about 1:45 this morning and said, sorry fellas, you're making just too much noise. They said, look, we've got to get this engine right, we've got to get it in the car, we've got to run tomorrow at Mount Panorama. They said, look, put it in the car and follow us. And they gave them a run back to Bathurst behind the flashing blue light to run the engine in.
Well, nothing else, it seems like everyone cooperates in the lead up to the James Hardy 1000. Here's Kadiyama, we'll be following.
53.5 seconds behind Larry Perkins in the dealer team Commodore.
Doing well after that pit stop. They fought back, they were a minute plus before, but the pit stop by Peter Brock handing over to Larry Perkins, so we've had 3 drivers so far in the car.
We've just finished giving Laurie Nelson the big wrap in car 59, the Capri, as the class leader under 3 litre, and that's changed. He's dropped back to 3rd. 55, Barry and Glenn Seaton now the class leaders there, ahead of car number 64, and that's Les Gross and Alan Cant in a Capri ahead of Laurie Nelson.
Here's Bob Morris calling to the pits.
Driver change.
Rusty French taking over the car.
Alan Brown helping.
Alan Brown has taken over the role as team manager for the weekend. Was to have co-driven the car with Rusty French. But Morris has done a good job for the team. Evan Green moving into position down there for this pit stop.
Wasn't that curiously slow? Morris was out of the car for 10, 15 seconds before French endeavoured to step in. I mean, usually they're dragging each other in and out of the vehicle.
Well, French stepped over the wall, so whether or not he saw the quick pit stop, Evan Green positioning himself. We'll be going down to Evan.
Time clock running. 35 seconds. Still, look, there's a wheel off there at the front. I mean, this is ridiculously slow. They were in 7th spot. They're not going to be now. Drop back to 8th. Car 16, in fact, has moved ahead of them on the track, and that's Fred Gibson in the 2nd Nissan Bluebird entry. And that puts Gibbo up into 7th place. It's the dealer team Commodore in front, the Moffat Mazda 2nd, STP car number 6 3rd, Jim Keogh 4th in car 12. Jansen is in 5th place on the track. McLeod RX7 is running 6th at the present. Then Fred Gibson, Steve Harrington, and this car, provided they get out of pit row in a hurry.
1:07.71 the time for the pit stop, and Rusty French takes off in car number 4. There's more interesting action to follow in the James Hardy 1983 version from Mount Panorama at Bathurst. We'll take a break. We'll be back.
Speculating about the reason for the long change. Well, the reason is that Bob Morris looks exhausted. Bob, you've driven yourself into the ground.
Yes, I think it's probably lack of racing during the year and race condition, but I think, you know, it was probably a bit much to do the 2 sessions straight off. The car is going very well. We had an oil fume problem, and I started being sick at the wheel, so I thought I went as far as I could so we wouldn't have to make an extra stop, and hand it over to Rusty.
Does the heat make things worse?
Yeah, the heat's really bad in the car, and but the car's going very well. There's no problems with it, and we're really happy with it.
It's been a great drive. We'll let you recover and get your breath back. Bobby Morris, back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Evan. Following Kadiyama down the straight from race cam in George Fury's Nissan Turbo to the bottom of Conrod Straight through Murray's Corner. Should be able to gauge the speed difference between the Mazda with the 13B engine and George Fury in the turbocharged Nissan Bluebird. To Hell Corner, left-hander. Now the run to Mountain Straight. Next corner they come up on is the right-hander at GTX Bend. Here we can see Gary Scott, who is, of course, behind the wheel, taking over from George Fury, and closing up behind Katayama as they come up to GTX. Heading up towards BP Cutting, left-hander, which they approach now. Very, very close indeed to Katayama, and they're coming up on a slower car. Gary Scott pulls to the inside. Just how close are they? Right there you can see the rear spoiler on the RX-7. That's how close they are, and Scott is trying hard. Across the top of the mountain, coming up on a slower car. Wait to see whether the car moves out of the way. It is close company there, right behind that Commodore. And through the dipper. Down now towards, through the S's, towards Forest Elbow. Katayama finds a little inside room there and goes through, puts a lap on that car, and then we have, of course, Gary Scott following as Katayama got the break out of that manoeuvre, dropping down into Forest Elbow. Speed difference. The little four-cylinder Nissan Turbo pulls past the Commodore. Transalloy 53 entry. Coming down towards Murray's corner again. So Katayama has been able to pull away just a little bit from George Fury, but Fury may close it up under brakes as they come to Murray's corner. And they're back where they started from, the last lap. Gary Scott. Katayama pulls to the inside. Scott follows and sits very close indeed to Katayama in the Moffat Mazda number 43. Great race, great rivals here from the Mazda and the Nissan teams. Heading up Mountain Straight, and Scott now pulls to the outside and goes past Katayama. We pan back to show you the other shot now. We were looking at the rear of the RX-7. Now you can see the front of it as it follows Gary Scott into GTX Bend. Had a great scrap for the last 5 laps of this race. There's Katayama, number 43, up to the cutting once again. There's the rear view from race camp coming across the mountain. Leaving Katayama over that part of the circuit. Once again down into the cross skyline to the dipper. The S's and down towards Forest Elbow. They drop down into Forest Elbow, and it's Conrod Straight once again with Katayama. And the Moffat car still in 43, 55 seconds behind. Let's take a look at the Wins Automotive Products scoreboard for us. Race leader is still Brock and Harvey. Moffat and Katayama in second place. Grice and Bond in third. Up they come. Peter Jansen and David Parsons. And back in fifth place is Jim Keogh and New Zealander Leo Leonard. Coming down towards the windsock again, and that scrap still continues, although this time Katayama might be having a slight braking problem. The car is moving over the road just a little bit. Comes through this corner. Still trying to make up that deficit, that 55-second deficit on the race leader, Peter Brock, now with Larry Perkins behind the wheel. Mountain Straight, as pulling into the pits is Gary Scott. In for a pit stop in the Nissan Turbo. talking to Howard Marsden, the team manager. There you can see the hood coming up. Scott sits patiently in the pits. Marsden supervising the pit stop as mechanics move in, taking a look at the motor. So after running so strongly and bringing us very clear pictures of the scrap that they were having with Katayama, Scott is now back in the pits. Well, the race lead still Peter Brock, 55 seconds back to the 43 car. Then, of course, Alan Grice still in third place. Our ticker continues as Gary Scott has had a glass of or a sip of water. He's ready to go back out again. We'll take a break and then return to Mount Panorama at Bathurst for the great race.
Katayama ahead of him on the track. This man really done a tremendous job with this car to be in the race, let alone occupying 5th position as he is at the present time, with 65 laps gone in the great race for 1983, and a lot of the starters gone too, I might tell you. It has been the most horrendous affair for many of these competitors. Down Conrod Straight, the STP car tucked in behind him. The whine of the big V8 engines. And of course, it's a V8 fight at the moment, with the exception of car 43, the Moffat Mazda, with Katayama at the wheel. But going through at the moment, Keogh in car 12, Bond in car 6, the lead car for STP. Bond pulls alongside. He's in 3rd spot on the track. Takes Keogh. Larry Perkins, the race leader still in the dealer team Commodore number 25, has a 55-second margin on car 43 with Katayama at the wheel. And then it's only 3.8 seconds between Katayama and Colin Bond. So we'll probably see Bondi swing onto the tail of Katayama pretty shortly, although Katayama probably will just have the edge over the top of the mountain, perhaps next time round the bottom of Conrod Straight. We'll find the big V8 closing the gap somewhat. Somebody going quite slowly there pulls over to the right and allows the other faster cars through, quite rightly and gentlemanly of him. Meantime, Seaton and Son continue to lead the 3-litre class in their Capri. Jim Keogh, Melbourne solicitor, gets a lot of fun. Oh, puts a lot into motor racing. A lot of effort, a lot of time, and a lot of money. Of course, it is not cheap. As I said, the man is really lucky to be in the race, let alone in this position, 6th place on the track at the present time. And because he went through the horrors during qualifying and timed practice here during the week. After slaving, as I said, with time and money to get the car ready and to make it competitive, the whole thing almost came unstuck for Jim Keogh and the Toshiba Commodore. This is what happened on Friday at the bottom of Conrod Straight in timed practice. Sideways, off the track, through the fence, steel posts going every which way. Just missed the sign, just missed the culvert, through the fence, in the air, and back onto the track, and you will see John Harvey in the second dealer team Commodore just shim through there as Keogh gives him the flick. and into the sand. Well, they work like demons to get it back in shape, and as you can see, on his way up Conrod Straight and sitting pretty in 5th place. In 5th place in the James Hardie 1000, the great race of '83. So for some of the more highly fancied candidates, the race is over, or all but over, because of the huge problems that they've had. Jim Keogh has been lucky enough to sort his problems out on Friday and doing it well today. Car 11, we've had in the pits Gary Rogers, the Soundwaves disco car. I can't quite see from our vantage point whether there is a driver change there. I will let you know. .67 laps down. That means just under 100 to go. 96 laps to go, and one wonders just how many will survive the awful rate of attrition in this race. Larry Perkins at the wheel of the only surviving dealer team Commodore in the race. He's the 3rd man to have a seat in the car today. Johnny Harvey started out that way. 0-5 went west. Peter Brock stepped in Harvey's place. And then when Brock came in, he handed over to Larry Perkins, who was his original co-driver in 0-5. And Brock has made mention of giving brother Phil a drive. I think we better get the guys over there to check just how many drivers they can have in this car on one day.
I'm sure Evan will be bringing us up to date on that. Here's the Harris Cook car coming in to the pits.
These are the guys that handed over the Big Falcon to Dick Johnson as a replacement for the Palmer Prudential wipeout at Forest Elbow during Hardie's Heroes. And they've done pretty well in a car that Harris freely admitted he'd never driven before, not even the make or model, before stepping into it this morning. They were quite highly placed at one stage. They've tended to drop back a little in the field at the present time. You know, there are only 3 cars on the front running lap. Perkins in 25, Katayama in 43, and Bond in car number 6.
Jim Keogh going through the cutting now.
The top positions, checking them again. There we are. Dealer team Commodore 25 in front of 43. The Moffat Mazda RX-7, Katayama at the wheel. 6 is 3rd, the Commodore. Colin Bond driving the STP entry at the present time. Then car 3, Parsons and Jensen. Another Commodore followed by Keogh, the man we're following at the moment, and who's had such tremendous good luck to be in this position. Car 50, Graham Bailey and Peter McLeod, the Slick 50 Mazda, doing well on lap 65. Then Wigston, Harrington, the second STP car, French and Gibson, the first Nissan Bluebird, the only Nissan. No, I'm sorry, George Fury is still out there. Don't do him a disservice. Gary Rogers, Benson Brown, car 11, a Commodore is next. Then Bobby Morris dropped back with Rusty French now in the car number 4, Sands Commodore. Selden and Grant in a Falcon follow that. The only Camaro in the race, Bergman and Longhurst, the big American sedan, hanging in there but well back at this stage. Gillard and Alexander in an RX-7, then a couple more Commodores, Cook and Harris, Geisler and Radburn, the Falcon of Wilmington and Griffin, Kennedy and Taylor in a Commodore, Topher and Matthews Commodore well back in the field. Then we come to the first of the 3-litre cars, car 55, the Capri of father and son, Barry and Glenn Seaton. And what a great job they're doing. And I tell you what, they could be there at the finish and figuring quite highly in the outright placings. Millen and Jones next in an RX-7, then the second 3-litre car, Kent and Gross in a Capri, Harrop and Cullen a Commodore, Gulson and Murphy an Alpha, another Capri, Hazelton and Strouberg, the RX-7 and Murden and Mulverhill, Hire and Bretland in the Audi, McClure and White in a Gemini, the Nissan of Scott and Fury well back in the field after that mishap on the end of the first lap where they had to call in and take a long pit stop. Shield and Story, car number 37, is next. And so on down to the bottom of the field now. These cars so far back. Cook and Walker, the ones in black you'll see from here on are out of contention altogether. In fact, if not out of the race. So you can see that there's a bunch of drivers who had a bad day at Mount Panorama on this October 2, 1983, the day of the great race. Pause for breath. That's a big list. Not only is it a big list of those still running, it's an awful big list of those that are out. Jim Keogh still circulating though, and so is Larry Perkins in car 25. He leads the great race at this stage, and we'll be returning to it at Mount Panorama after this break.
Glenn Seaton is about to take over the wheel of the Capri, which is leading the class. He's the youngest driver in the race. He's never raced at Bathurst before. Glenn, how does it feel to be headed for this situation?
Very nervous at the moment, but the car's going well. And we're 2 laps in front of the second place, so far I feel confident.
You've really only got to keep it together, haven't you? Just run this central passage and drive it very carefully, I suppose.
Yeah, just drive around, keep the car on the track, and hope it keeps going to the end of the day.
How long before you change over, Glenn?
Another 2 laps.
2 more laps and you're in the ballpark, huh?
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Peter Werrett, with Glenn Seaton waiting for Dad, Bo Seaton, to arrive in and pass over to the youngest son. Gary Scott back out on the racetrack. Bringing you some great pictures from race cam inside the Nissan Turbo today. It's really a pity that they had the gearbox problem at the start of the race that put them so well down in the list and out of contention. There's 55, Barry Seaton. 21 years of racing in the distance events here at Mount Panorama. And being passed there on the outside is Barry, we believe, heading into the pit area. Looks a little like the Barry Jones Millen Goodrich car. Going ahead in the Mazda, coming down to the windsock and to the player bridge. So we expect Barry Seaton in shortly. Peter's already spoken with Glenn, and they're trying to make sure they can protect the lead that they have in the 3-litre class. It's not going to be this lap as Seaton goes across the line. Just ahead of him is the scrap going on with Terry Shield and Barry Jones, 2 great rivals from the Amaru Park season in Sydney. Barry Jones, we mentioned before, is driving on street radials for the James Hardy race this year. Was up to 20th position. We'll keep you in touch with how he's going through the field.
Terry Shield had a very long pit stop earlier in the race, but the car is out and running quite well at the present time. And as Mike said, these two are old adversaries from our telecasts at Amaru Park, and it's good to see them in action here at Mount Panorama at Bathurst. Shield just seems to have the edge on Jones and the Goodrich car going up the mountain. Looks like the Finnegan Commodore they're giving the slip to there as they go through.
Back with George Fury under the Hardy Bridge along Pitt Straight. Gary Scott at the wheel into Hell Corner and working up towards the mountain via Mountain Straight and GTX Bend. Gap still about the same between the race leader, Peter Brock, and the Katayama Moffat entry, 51 seconds, at 11.5 seconds back to Alan Grice in third place. They've done very well despite the problems that they had.
Cullen's got trouble.
They had smoke billowing out of the car prior to their last pit stop, and Cullen very slowly coming over the mountain.
I don't think we'll see him make it to the bottom again the way he's going. He's pulling off. Car number 22. No, he's still trying to get round, and he may do it. The Cullen Automotive Industries Commodore entry was running in third place.
And blowing a lot of smoke there too, Gary.
In fact, briefly second at one stage on about the 22nd lap. But slipping right out of contention at this stage. Seaton's in. Let's watch the pit stop, the change from father to son. The class leader here. The under 3 litre Capri. Peter Wherrett standing by. There he is.
Barry Seaton out of the car. Young Glenn is in the car. A fairly quick stop. Tyres going on, the offside only. Fuel going in. Windscreen wipe. Glenn getting a hand with the belt. Slightly smaller than his dad, but not much. Getting a few instructions too. Ready to fire up the car. Wheels are on. Fuel is out.
Had a bad crash down here.
And it's away. Glenn Seaton's on his way.
It's Lawrence Hazelton and Jerry Starberg in a Capri, one of the 3 litre class cars, car number 57. On the top of the mountain and off the wall, or on the wall, it's more like it, hanging on the wall. Driver standing out, leaning against the fence, so he's, well, I was going to say okay, he looks very groggy on it.
Very lucky driver indeed. The car is just perched on top of the wall, keeping in mind to viewers at home there were many years when there was no concrete wall to the left-hand side going across the mountain. As it drops straight down.
Oh, he could have ended up anywhere.
There's our chopper shot of 57 that's had a moment up there and has got up on top of the concrete wall, the top end of the mountain.
Yes, from our commentary position here down, all the way down on pit straight, we can actually see the rear end of that car sticking up over the fence. That chopper shot, in fact, looks straight back down the mountain. So lucky. Just off the top edge. We'll probably get a graphic view of it. Oh, indeed.
Right up on top of the wall, and they're going to have a dickens of a job removing that from on top of the wall to get it on the back of the quick left truck.
Well, the truck is going to take up half the track there. The truck is going to take up half the track. It is the most inconvenient place on the circuit to have a truck park because it's so fast.
It's really bent the car. Looks like certainly not much you could salvage out of the front of the Capri, which would suggest almost a head-on confrontation with the wall. But we'll have a report from our officials, the ARDC officials. The crash tender vehicle has a truck that goes straight to the top of the mountain, which carries a doctor. We have a number of doctors here at the circuit, and the doctor will then call for an ambulance, and the ambulance is also strategically placed around the circuit. Car, we believe, has been dispatched from the bottom part of the circuit, and they should be up to the scene of the accident very shortly.
Laurie Hazelton was telling us before the race that the worst moment he'd ever had before in motor racing was here on Friday in the second practice session. Friday afternoon, he had a wheel rim explode under the car. Maybe the same thing's happened here, because something has put him into that wall with awful force.
Well, the yellow flag's flying. Let's go down now to the pits, and let's hear from Evan Green.
Just following through with the crash there, Mike. Obviously he's gone into the fence a bit before and rolled along. If you draw back a bit, in fact, you can see the tyre marks where he's hit a bit further. They've gone in, they're on the road, bang. That's the point where he's hit the fence and rolled along the top. It must have come within an ace of going over the other side and duplicating that terrible crash that Tony Roberts suffered back in 1969. In those days, there was no safety fence, and Roberts just launched himself into space and landed in the far trees. You can see the Strawberg's bonnet there, where it's been torn off the car, but that has done a wall of death act, rolling right along the top of the fence, and must have come perilously close to going over. A couple of years ago, he'd have been down in the bush, like Tony Roberts was, but luckily the fence has saved him. I don't think the driver is any more than shaken up, but it's one of the most dangerous parts of the circuit, and I doubt whether they can get that car off there without causing a complete stop to occur in the race, because they won't get a truck there at an angle to extricate it without blocking the track.
Evan, it must have been hard in the mouth stuff for the huge bank of spectators right at that point too.
Yes, well, it's a favourite place, Gary, for people to come and see what goes on. You can see the crowd there. These are the real enthusiasts, the ones who come to Bathurst to watch the difficult part, and no greater demands are made upon driver skill than down through these bends leading down towards Forest Elbow.
They don't call that area Skyline for nothing.
No. And he went so close to becoming part of the Skyline. He must have rolled along the top there for some distance. You can see in that one shot the tyre marks right on the left of the screen. What caused him to go, I don't know. He may have touched another car, or might even have gone into the bank on the other side and then gone across the road. See how he's changed direction by the tyre marks? He has gone one way. Maybe it was just a correction. Maybe he touched the car. Maybe, in fact, he actually touched the bank. And then he rolled along, what, 25 metres of fencing to finish up still on the right side of the fence. But you can see the driver there resting, shaken, but I think largely unhurt, protected by the safety fence. That is a close one.
Evan, you've spent the past hour or so in the pit area. What seems to be the general feeling amongst the teams? Quite a few disappointed drivers?
Oh, well, it's not disappointment so much. It's just a sort of a frantic desire to keep going and try and overcome all the problems they're having. People like Gary Rogers, who was one of the leaders, has had persistent brake trouble. He had a long stop just a while ago to change the master cylinder. We saw Warren Cullen come in with the Commodore, and his car was behaving like Boadiceu's chariot. The axle was out on the left-hand side. He's now, in fact, taken the car to the back of the pits to work on it, but he almost mowed down a few people at the knees. I'm sure that Warren didn't know the axle had come out, but this lethal 1 metre of metal was screwing away in the air as he drove down and had people jumping for their lives. We saw Bob Morris, of course, come in and collapse as he came out of the car. So tough were those first two stints. He drove very hard. He always drives fast, of course, and it's very difficult when he comes back. I think rather than an air of disappointment, there's an air of disbelief. So much has gone wrong to so many cars that it's like people being at the movies. They don't think this is reality. They can't believe it's happening to them. We're now into the critical phase of the race where the real pros will come to the fore. They'll grind on, they'll pick up the seconds on the other cars, and they'll decide who's going to win and who's not going to win. And it's under these circumstances we see who's settling down in the lead, and that's when drivers like Brock and Moffat really do come to the fore. They can maintain their concentration for hour after hour, no matter what happens. They never forget they're there to win a motor race. If they have a disappointment, they put it behind them.
Evan, you mentioned Brock. The question a lot of people are asking is how many people can drive car 25 in one day?
Well, if they've nominated the four drivers, the four of them can drive. I'd be surprised if they put Phil in for the last run. He's not as quick as Peter. It's a question of whether brotherly love wins out over against hard-headed sense as to who should drive the car. But the more people who drive the car, the harder it's going to be. Certainly, Peter Brock now knows what the problem is. He told it to Larry Perkins, who's in the car at the moment, and it would make the greatest sense for Peter Brock to get back in and do that last stint and try and get the car to the flag. To put a fresh driver in a car that's worn and behaving erratically, as Peter described, is very difficult and probably very unfair on Phil Brock. Let's hope that Peter can take a cold, analytical look at it, not behave like a brother who loves his brother, but behave like a team manager who says, right, we've got to win this race. Let's put in the best driver, and the best driver is me.
Thank you, Evan Green, as we follow the cars coming up through the mountain to BP cutting. Peter Brock still out there in front. We'll take a break and return to the James Hardy 1000 from Mount Panorama at Bathurst. To Mount Panorama at Bathurst. We're picking up the cars, still heading up to the top of the mountain. This is the Grant Selden machine, top placed forward so far in the field.
And whilst we see Selden and Grant's leading forward entry go around, car 6, the third place getter in the race, is in the pits. That's the Grice STP car. Now, are they changing drivers? Difficult to tell just at the moment. Just tightening up, it looks like.
The rest of the crew are ready for the car to come out, so there is a problem there. Evan, I'm quite sure, will be checking on that for us shortly.
Bond is out of the car. Grice is back in. Taking time, precious time. They can't afford to waste. Moffat, Katayama at the wheel of the Moffat Mazdas, getting away on the track in front of them. 51.37. The time in the pits.
Bergman.
The big Camaro bites the dust. The yellow flag matching the car colour.
At the top of the mountain, the car parked across there on the grass, as you can see. Been a number of incidents up at the top of the mountain for the past half hour or so in the race. Not the place a driver really wants to retire from a race and step out of the car and then join the spectators. They're a very vocal group on the top of Mount Panorama. However, the Camaro is a non-goer at this stage in the James Hardy 1000 for 83. Number 25, Peter Brock, still leads. 57 seconds, the buffer to Katayama. And the number 43 Mazda, and Grice still holding on to third place. One lap down then to David Parsons and Peter Jansen. Let's return to the pits now to Evan Green.
I'm sitting in here with Andrew Harris. Andrew, you were the almost forgotten man about the big drama last time, swapping cars. It was you who gave your car to Dick Johnson. Well, Dick's in trouble, but how's the car that you got going?
Well, the car that Dick gave me to compensate me for giving me his car is flying, and we're having very few problems with it. We've had a slight oil leak, which we've now rectified. The car feels very strong. Gary Cook's back in the car and lapping at about 223, 224. I think the car's going to go well, and we'll probably run out in the top 10 if it holds together.
Well, it's fine for Gary. He's used to driving Commodores, but it's your first stint. You were driving Falcons up till now.
That's right.
How did you find it getting into an absolutely strange motor car?
Oh, it was really odd. I mean, I stepped in the car. The Falcon, as you know, is a very light car to drive because it's got power steering, but very big. And all of a sudden, I'm in a Commodore, and you can actually see out of the car in a Commodore. You can see the ground there, and you can see the ground there. And it's a much faster car out of corners and much more twitchy. So it took me about 10 laps to settle into it before I got down to reasonable times.
Andrew, what sort of deal was worked out that enabled you to give your car to Dick Johnson and accept another car from someone else?
Well, basically, the way it started, Dick's wife walked past me, and I think Jill's one of the loveliest people in motorsport, and she was in tears. And I thought, well, the fans would much prefer to see Dick Johnson out there than Andrew Harris. So I said to Jill, listen, go and tell Dick he can have my car, and I'll pull out of the race. And as soon as I did that, the manager of Prudential came down, not the manager of Prudential, Palmer's, yeah. Came down and said, no, we won't accept that. We'd love to take the car because Dick has to run a Falcon. We will find you another car to race. And you can see on the screen, there it is, running strong as strong.
And backed by the people of Bendigo.
Yes, it's just, we did a straight changeover, in fact. I'm using that car for the weekend, which is now, in fact, owned by Dick Johnson. At the end of the weekend, I get my car back and Dick gets his back. But I think the way this thing's going, we might try and talk a deal at the end of the weekend.
Well, you totally confused me. I forgot, I don't know who owns what car, but at least it's going well. Yes. And the people of Bendigo have every right to be cheering.
Thanks very much, Evan.
Thank you, Andrew Harris. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you very much to Evan Green and Andrew Harris. There's Gary Cook in the car, the Bendigo 9 Commodore coming down through the dipper. Yes, amazing deal, the way that was worked out within a couple of hours yesterday of the crash during qualifying by Dick Johnson.
Ross Palmer from Palmer Prudential is the man with the fat checkbook that just scribbles his name on the bottom of all those zeros. And it allowed everybody to come out happy. The Palmer Prudential Falcon back on the racetrack, at least for a time. And certainly Harris and Cook were happy. Now, the secret here is that Perkins in car 25, the dealer team Commodore, is extending the lead over Katayama in 43. It's now just on 1 minute, the margin between first and second. Alan Grice now back at the wheel of car 6, the STP Commodore, still holding down third place on the track. They are the only 3 cars on the lead lap. It's then 1 lap down to Peter Jansen in the Cadbury Schweppes Commodore. Also 1 lap down, car 50, the Slick 50 Mazda of Peter McLeod, and also car 12, the Toshiba Commodore of Jim Keogh, although Keogh just made a pit stop and he may have dropped a little further back.
Heading up Mountain Straight again towards GTX Bend. Peter Brock passes down pit straight. Still, or not Peter Brock rather, but Larry Perkins in the Brock car. 59.6 in front, as Gary mentioned. Katayama still running in second place in the Alan Moffat Mazda, and Alan Grice and Colin Bond holding down third place. Would seem through consistency that coming up through the field again is car number 3. Was in this race with a big chance of outright victory. That's Peter Jansen and young David Parsons. They've done well, although a lap down, still running in 4th place. They have a tremendous record here of finishing in the top 4 each year. Great tracking shot by our 7 helicopter across the top of Mount Panorama. It's following Gary Cook through past the car, the Hazelton car that we see still suspended on top of the concrete wall there. Time now to review the James Hardy in our hourly update.
Third hour of the great race, the James Hardy 1000, saw Gary Walden in the second Stuyvesant entry. Car number 34 stalled at the top of the mountain shortly after taking over the car. And at the bottom, same story, different entry. Car number 29, the John Donnelly Falcon, also out of business. Peter Brock comes in for a pit stop, having taken over the 25 Falcon and about to hand over the wheel. Brock out. Larry Perkins takes the wheel of the 25 car. This car flying on the track, but so is this one with the Japanese Works Mazda driver now at the wheel of Moffat Mazda 43, Yoshi Katayama. Forced the pace in the third hour of the race. Bobby Morris, who had done so, into the pits, handing over to Rusty French, the man who gave Morris the late drive in the car. It's cost them places, though. Back on the track, race cam in the Nissan Bluebird of George Fury, following Katayama across the top and down the mountain. Bobby Morris had handed over to Rusty French, and I can tell you what, it was hard work out on the mountain today, not only for Bobby Morris, but for all the drivers in the race. Jim Keogh, Toshiba, Commodore, so well placed after surviving the dramas of practice. And Morris, as you can see, it's been a tough day. His first race drive for a year. Jones and Shield go through. Mazda competitors, and car 55, the 3-litre class leader, Barry Seaton. And on top of the mountain, Laurie Hazelton. Oh, what a mishap in the car 57 Capri, sitting off the wall at Skyline. All the drama in the third hour of the great race for 1983, the James Hardy 1000. It's over for this car.
And the James Hardy race continues as we track the field down through Conrod Straight. This is Phil Alexander in the 35 Mazda RX-7. 2 laps down on the leaders, but now making it up within the top 10 as he heads into the pit area. We'll take a break and then return live to the James Hardy 1000 from Mount Panorama.
Who's just handed over car 6 to Alan Grice. It looks pretty hot, hard work out there, Colin.
Well, it is, Evan. It's obviously a warm day, but the problem we're having with the car, I think it's common to most of the V8s when you watch them, is that we've got to pump the brakes all the time to get a pedal up. I think that the wider wheels that we've got on the cars now are just generating so much load into that front strut area and that you're getting a bending movement. It's pushing the pads away from the disc, and you've just got to keep pumping the brakes to get the pads out so you can stop the car. And it's quite okay when you've got a normal lap going, but if something happens and you just got to stop straight away, you've got to get 4 pumps in there somewhere before you can stop it, and that's the only thing you're worrying about.
Things look pretty frantic out there. A few cars into the wall and lots of cars in strife.
It is. I think that a lot of cars obviously tried to go too quick too soon, particularly the lesser runners. I think they tried to run with the front runners, and we did have a lot of cars stopping in the first hour, which I would have thought normally wouldn't have happened in this race. But these things happen. At this stage of the game, the car's running well. It's as long as we don't have to jump on the brakes, I think it's some unexpected sort of incidents.
Alan Grice has a reputation for being a desperately hard driver. Can you control him? Can you just get him to back up a little bit, do you think? Or is he just by nature a sprinter?
No, I think by nature he's a sprinter. He's the main driver in the car. He's been driving the car all year. And it's nice for him to actually run the car at his race. I got in the car, did my bit for him to bring the car back so he'd get in it and sprint to the finish if he wants to. And I think that's what he wants to do.
OK, Colin, let you go off and get a drink and have a bit of a rest.
Thank you.
And back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Evan, and thank you, Colin Bond. Car number 3, down through the gears, heading down to Murray's Corner. David Parsons from Tasmania, a youngster in a hurry.
In 4th place at the present time, but we'll talk more about his interesting character and a most accomplished young man. But whilst we watch him go around, let's just check the win scoreboard again at this stage for the top 5. The dealer team Commodore, Perkins still at the wheel of that car and leading the race by almost a full minute from Katayama behind the wheel of 43, the Moffat Mazda RX-7. Then Grice back in car 6, the STP Commodore holding down 3rd place. David Parsons driving the Cadbury Schweppes Commodore in 4th place. And the slick 50 McLeod Mazda is in 5th place outright. Boy, oh boy, they are doing well. That's the top 5 on the win scoreboard. David Parsons taking up towards the top of the mountain now, and as we said, he really has come on enormously as a driver, has found favour with Captain Peter Jansen, who gave him a drive here in this car last year at Bathurst, and Parsons did the job and took the Rookie of the Year award. 23 years of age from Tasmania, and as we see him going around, I think we ought to congratulate both he and his wife. His wife is in the Devonport Maternity Hospital in Tasmania at the present time, having just given birth to their 2nd child, a son named Mitchell John, who arrived last Monday night at 4 minutes to 8 and becomes the Parsons' 2nd Bathurst child. And I say that because it was only 2 weeks before his inaugural Bathurst drive last year that his wife gave birth to their 1st child, a daughter, Kirsty Lear. I guess if this becomes an annual pattern, he'll need to keep getting big drives with Peter Jansen to earn the bread to to keep them all going down there in Tasmania.
Well, he was Rookie of the Year here last year, and he's put up a splendid performance so far. In fact, Peter Jansen entrusted the Commodore to him yesterday for Hardy's Heroes, qualified the car well. He's in good shape. The car seems to be running along quite strongly. We're looking at getting radar times along Conrad. Let's see if we've picked up Peter Jansen. Yes, coming up now, or David Parsons rather. 2:54.27. That time down Conrad Straight. Now, thanks to Autex for providing that system for us throughout today's telecast. David Parsons, and here is the rusty French Bob Morris machine just back behind them.
Mike, a few people that saw the car off the top of the mountain there, the Laurie Hazelton Capri number 57 hanging off the wall at Skyline, were curious and a little indignant, in fact, to know why they couldn't see an ambulance racing up there to take care of the driver. The fact is, every time the marshal's car and the crash truck go out, a doctor goes with them, and he then calls an ambulance if it's required. And I'm happy to say that in this case it wasn't. The driver of the car has been checked by the doctor, and although severely shaken, is otherwise okay.
Well, that's great news. Should reassure all those folk following Laurie Hazelton in today's race, or who were following Laurie Hazelton until that moment up on the top of Mount Panorama. Larry Perkins in car number 25, starting to increase his lead, even more so over the Katayama Moffat Mazda. That lead is now blown out to 1 minute 8 seconds.
Do you reckon that Al might be champing at the bit to get back behind the wheel?
Could be, although as we've mentioned before, there was some tendency for a lot of people to believe that Katayama was perhaps a little harder on the car and drove it a little harder. Alan certainly will have the job to do in the closing stages of this race to pull back 1 minute 8 seconds on Larry Perkins, or as we would suspect for the closing stages, Peter Brock.
Still following David Parsons in the Cadbury Schweppes Commodore entry in 4th place. Now we go back inside the Nissan Bluebird following car 43, Katayama. Let's just see how hard he does drive.
They come down into Forest Elbow.
Gary Scott at the wheel of the Nissan Turbo. Katayama at the wheel of the Moffat Mazda car 43.
He was able to pull up the Mazda quite easily the last time we followed with the camera shots, and he's doing exactly the same. Gee, there's not much room there. Gary Scott driving, ton of concentration. Meantime, in the 3-litre class, all those folks following the Capris, it's still young Glenn Seaton and his dad, Barry Seaton, who lead the class in car number 55, the Alpha Couriers Ford Capri.
The Capri benefit has been broken up just a little there. 2nd place, 64. Les Gross and Alan Cant in a Capri, but 3rd spot in that class is now held by car 58. That's Ray Gulson and Gerard Murphy in an Alfa Romeo.
Race settling into a pattern now with the number 25 car still able to pull just a fraction each couple of laps over number 43. It was 68. They've gained 2/100ths of a second in the last lap or so. So they're steadily building on that lead. I think they would like to have as much of a lead as they can over the Alan Moffat Katayama Mazda RX-7. There's Barry Seaton that we were following. A section of the crowd here today along the pit straight, Mount Panorama. There's the STP car. Goes through.
It's the second
up
car.
the mountain. That's the Wigston entry, heading up Mountain Straight. 84 laps into the James Hardy 1000 for this year. David Parsons, Peter Jansen, who is one of motor racing's more colourful figures, talks big figures when it comes to Bathurst budgets. According to Jansen, his annual pilgrimage to this mountain costs in the vicinity of $80,000. He says for that outlay, he likes to do it well and to certainly finish well. What really intrigues me is how this man, who has only had one motor race of this type since the last Bathurst, to be so naturally smooth and display almost effortlessly the stamina required to last the distance. Here in the pits, Peter McLeod is in for his pit stop in the slick Mazda RX-7.
In 5th place at the present time, although two laps down on the race leader, Larry Perkins in the dealer team Commodore. There's the damage that was done early in the race. They have tried to tape it up on an earlier pit stop. We saw him almost have a big lose at one stage, chasing Alan Moffat across the top of the mountain. But they've done it well. Peter McLeod and Graham Bailey. Graham Bailey at the wheel of the car. Yes. McLeod himself is helping with the pit stop. Rushes round, organising, supervising the crew. Come on. Get the gear out of the way, fellas. And away goes Graham Bailey. One of the most underrated drivers around. McLeod heaves a sigh of relief. And Slick 50 goes out to rejoin the race. It was a suspension, a bit of a caning on the last hump out of pit row.
Fighting back through some traffic too as he left the pits. Graham Bailey on his 5th Bathurst, and also a father of 5. The 5s are working well for Graham Bailey, heading up to Mountain Straight. Back down to the pits to Evan Graham.
Peter, you gave Graham Bailey then a drink. Does that suggest he's going to stay in the car for the rest of the race?
No, Graham's staying in for another 32 laps. which is our race plan, and everything's going according to plan at the moment. I did the first session, which was a reasonably long one. He's had 2 short sessions, or he's had one, he's having the second one now, and then I'll finish the race off in another 32 laps time.
You think that's better than having one long stint as some of the others are trying to do under these conditions?
Well, we can't because of fuel consumption. We would love to have had 3 long sessions, 3, say, 55-lap sessions, but the fuel just won't let us do that, so I've had to break it up into 4 sessions, and the best way to do it was run these middle 2 with low fuel loads.
What caused the damage to the front of the car?
Slow Commodores. Yeah, I'm afraid there's some very mobile chicanes out there, and it makes it very, very difficult to keep your fast lines when they don't look in their mirrors and they just sort of meander around as if it's a Sunday picnic. I think some of them don't. We've realised that some of us work 12 months to get here. They just turn up with $1 million on the day and act as if it's a, as I say, a Sunday picnic or a Hollywood stint.
Peter McLeod running in 5th spot in the James Hardy 1000.
Pete's a Mazda dealer from Wollongong. His hobby is car restoration. Well, he'll just have a little work to do on old Slick 50 when they get through here today.
Picking up as the Graham Bailey Slick 50 car heads down Conrod Straight. Still, Larry Perkins leading the 1983 Great Race. We'll be back after this break.
Back at Mount Panorama, and the race leader is car 25, the dealer team Commodore, entry number 2, but with a swag of drivers, and the man behind the wheel at the moment and doing a great job is Larry Perkins, extending their lead over Moffat's Mazda car 43 with Yoshi Katayama at the wheel at the present time. Larry Perkins, one of the most interesting men in motor racing in Australia today. He does a great job for the dealer team, helps them with the preparation of their cars and the testing of their cars. Bathurst record, you can see he's been in 5 times. Winner last year with Peter Brock in the dealer team Commodore. Hasn't had a bad moment, he says. He's the man that built and co-drove across Australia a solar-powered car, so he's a man of many facets. Extending the lead, as I said, by now out to 73.9 seconds over Katayama. Car 24 is in the pits. Let's take you to Evan Green.
And it's Scotty Taylor just strapping himself into the Commodore. His friend Kevin Kennedy is strapping him in. An amazing team, Gary. They've been together for 7 years. Their 7th successive Bathurst. No other team can match it. Scotty's a car dealer, comes from Wodonga. Kevin, his mate, just making sure things are right, telling him what's wrong with the car. They're running 15th outright. I spoke to Scotty, a short, thick set fella, just before he got in the car. I said, what's wrong with the car? He said, nothing. And that's a different story to the ones we've been hearing all day from practically every other driver.
Evan, you said they've been together for 7 years. Do you know that there are only 16 driver combinations here today that have survived since last year's race as combinations?
Well, here's one that made it for more years than you'd imagine. Kevin, come here. We were just saying, you've been together with Scotty for 7 years. Why have you stuck together so long?
He likes Bacardi and I like Scotch. We don't mix our drinks.
You must enjoy Bathurst.
We do. Very good. Having a good trip this time. We're a bit slow, but we're still there. A lot of cars dropping out, so we're there with a chance.
You're the freshest looking driver I've seen here all day.
I take it easy. Look after my health.
Kevin Kennedy with Scotty Taylor running in 15th place. Back to you, Gary.
Yeah, just of interest too, Evan. If memory serves me correct, Barry Seaton and Don Smith hold the partnership record here at Bathurst. They've driven together 9 times.
Right. There have been some famous old partnerships in years gone by, but of the current lot, that pair of old-timers, if they'll forgive me calling them that, Scotty Taylor and Kevin Kennedy, hold the record. And are they having fun?
Well, Larry Perkins is having fun as he barrels over the top of Mount Panorama. 73.9 seconds the lead and extending over Katayama. Katayama at the present time is just coming across the start-finish line as Perkins goes to the top of the mountain. Katayama, in fact, now making the left-hander at the end of pit straight to make his way up the mountain again. Meantime,
it's the Bergman Camaro coming back into the pits after the trouble they had up at the top of the mountain. Slid the car off into the grass. The trucks have been able to pull it off.
Perkins is making 2 seconds a lap on Katayama. Katayama's done 41 laps at the wheel of Moffat's Mazda. I'm very surprised that they haven't hauled him in and that Moffat is not back behind the wheel.
Well, he's completed the required amount of time as a co-driver on the circuit, and I think Alan Moffat would be warming to the idea of trying to peg back the gap if he can. on the dealer team Commodore, presently being driven out in front by Larry Perkins. That is quite a gap. 1 minute 40 then back. And a lap to Alan Grice in car number 6. And David Parsons up into 4th place. And then, of course, Peter McLeod to 5th. The Weekston car has come up to 6th place, and Keogh to 7th. Bob Morris and Rusty French in 8th place. Across the top of Mount Panorama, Katayama in the Alan Moffat number 43 car. We've mentioned his times. We anticipate a pit stop probably within the next 5 laps by Katayama, with Alan Moffat to take over the controls for the late stint.
In polite Japanese terminology, does that make him Katayama-sama?
Could well do. Again, down towards Forest Elbow. It's Katayama going through in car number 43. Drove very well here last year. Now we'll try our Ortex radar printout of Katayama. We catch him with radar down Conrad Straight this time.
I don't think they'll have any trouble catching him. He's been slowing down just a little. And it's really developing into quite a serious situation for the Moffat endeavour here at Bathurst for 1983. Well placed just a few laps ago. Here comes the readout. Katayama, 252.6 kilometres per hour. We had Moffat earlier, I think, at about 256 kilometres per hour.
Not a great deal of difference. The 43's working well. Katayama in car 43, co-driving with Alan Moffat, who is 43. And if you'd believed all the talk before the start of the race about how uncompetitive the Mazdas would be against the V8s, you would believe that they would finish in 43rd place. No such thing. They're up there in 2nd at the moment. Starting to lose a little bit of time, as we mentioned, to Larry Perkins and the dealer team Commodore. Good shot there of Katayama coming up through GTX Bend.
Only 2 cars on the lead lap, and that's Perkins in 25, Katayama in 43. After Katayama, it's 1 minute 40 seconds and a lap down to car number 6. That's Alan Grice, the STP car, holding down 3rd place, and a 25-second gap after that to car 3. And that's the Cadbury Schweppes Commodore. We've mentioned man doing a great job in the race, who is in 7th place at the present time. 2 laps down is Jim Keogh, who's talking with Evan Green.
Well, Jim, you're the man, I reckon, that probably shouldn't be here after that phenomenal lose on Friday. Just tell us again what happened.
Well, I went into the braking area at the end of Conrad Straight, and the car got airborne just as I touched the brakes. And from then on, it was a matter of enjoying the ride.
You almost T-boned Johnny Harvey, the car that's leading the race now.
So I believe, and that was a desperate attempt to pass him because he was about a second in front of me. And I thought, well, I've got to get him now or never, and I got him. But we were set back about half a day in our preparation through it, unfortunately, and it robbed us of a chance to run in the Hardy's Heroes yesterday. But we've proven today that we would have been worthy members of the Hardy's Heroes runoff, because we're running in 5th place. The car's running very, very strongly. I've just handed over after 3 1/4 hours to Leo Leonard, who's New Zealand's champion driver. He'll look after it, and at the moment it's going like a Toshiba microwave oven. What more can I say?
What sort of damage was done to the car? Much?
The car was fairly badly damaged in the suspension and in the right-hand side of the body and the floor, and as a result of that, it's having a fair bit of a flex through the dips at the top of the mountain. And
but still good enough to put it up into 5th place. A remarkable effort from Keogh and Leo, as they call Jim Keogh and Leo Leonard. Back to you, Gary.
Thank you very much. And we've got race cam pictures out of car number 17, the Palmer Prudential Falcon. And bless my soul, it's Dick Johnson at the wheel.
Dick Johnson, Mike Roman, can you hear us?
Yeah, I sure can, Mike.
It's sort of the same place at the same day in a different year in a different car.
Yeah, you better believe it. But I tell you what, it's a funny sort of a car too, I'll tell you.
You mentioned you've had some handling problems with it, Dick.
I think that could be an understatement, Mike.
What's the game plan now? To try and just finish the race?
Just finish the race and give all those people that have helped us a bit of courage for next time. Because especially those guys from Tape and Tony Warren from CIG and those sort of people, and all our guys and our sponsors, they've been absolutely fantastic over the weekend.
Dick, I've heard you boasting before. I didn't think anything was too much of a handful for you.
No, still not a handful. We'll just do the best we can.
Dick, there's not as much traffic on the road, I don't think, as there was at this time last year.
No, I don't think there's too many left. There's Brock out behind me. I'll just let him go.
Larry Perkins at the wheel, I think.
Well, those guys, they've got a race in front of them, so we'll let them go. Not that we can do that much about it in this old hump anyway. But at least we got the camera working again.
Thank you very much on behalf of the viewers throughout Australia for that, and also your legend of followers in Queensland who are watching.
It's my pleasure.
Yesterday, after the accident, Dick, I think a lot of people were asking, would that have been the end of the road for Dick Johnson in terms of this couple of the setbacks you've had this year?
I tell you what, it takes a bit more than that to get me down. You have your low moments, and especially for my kids at home, they feel pretty bad.
Well, we're all riding with you, Dick. You've done a marvellous job. I think every Australian who has watched the qualifying, your accident yesterday, we're all riding with you today because you're a trier, and we're all proud of you.
Thanks, Mike.
Larry Perkins continues to lead the great race in the dealer team Commodore number 25 by 1 minute and 26 seconds to the Moffat Mazda driven by Yoshi Katayama. Will that change by the time we return? Let's take a break in the great race. Moffat, they can't open the driver's side door. Katayama scrambles across. Moffat pulls open the passenger side door, remembering it's a left-hand drive car. Now Moffat clambering in, trying desperate to get into the car because Perkins leads him by a minute 26 on the track. How the devil the door became jammed unless Katayama's had a collision somewhere around the track with another car or with a wall. What an amazing incident. Moffat wrenching at the door, desperate, couldn't get... Oh, he's almost collected Perkins in car 25.
Jinga me, that was close.
An important pit stop here. Peter Brock getting back in. He may drive to the end of the race. He'll certainly drive to the next refueling stop, which is in about 35 laps time, but it depends how he's going, what the lead is. There's a fire on the brake pad on the front. You can see the brake pads are on fire. It's nothing serious, but there was definite flame from there. Things are very tense, almost collected by Moffat, as you saw as he pulled out. That's a quick stop. They're clear on this side, clear on the other. Water on the windscreen. Haven't got too much time to do it. Peter said, get out of the way, I'll go. And Brock is underway. He'll probably drive to the end of the race. He'll decide when he comes into refuel in 35 lap time whether or not he'll do the last little stint. Moffat took 43 seconds, by the way, in the stop. Larry Perkins here. I'll have a chat to Larry. Larry, when Peter went out, he said the car was twitchy and a bit hard to drive. What's it like now?
Well, it's beautiful, I think. You know, at the pace I was driving around then, it'll go all day for sure. Yeah, just not quite set up the way Peter and I set our own up, but it's so close it doesn't really matter, and certainly not going to give us any drama at all.
Peter will probably stay out there till the very end now. Have a drink while you just think.
No, he'll probably come in again after 36 laps, and maybe I or John will go out again. We haven't decided yet. We'll see how it's all going.
Okay. Well, all sorts of drama happening here. Just in the back of the pits, we saw the Nissan Bluebird come in and suddenly it erupted in smoke. It looked like a turbo seal had gone. We'll find that information for you in a few moments. In the meantime, it's back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Evan. That was, in fact, car number 16, the Nissan Bluebird, driven by Gibson and French. So all three Nissan cars are now packed away in the tent. 16, just gone, as we saw. 15, George Fury with our race cam out of business, and the Turbo Pulsar that was driven by Christine Gibson and Bob Muir survived only 14 laps in today's race. So it's been a huge effort, and at this stage, well, not at this stage, no result for Nissan. The flying Peter Brock. back at the wheel of car 25 with the familiar 05 number pushed behind the pitch long ago. The top 5 win scoreboard after 93 laps. Brock at the wheel, 25 in front. Moffat back behind the wheel of the Mazda RX-7, having taken over in unusual fashion from Katayama in second place on the track, but well astern of the leader. Third place held down Alan Grice at Commodore. Gricey back behind the wheel there. Parsons still driving the number 3 Commodore in 4th place, and Graham Bailey at the wheel of the McLeod Mazda holding down 5th place, but 2 laps down on the race leader.
Incredible finishing record for Peter Brock here at Mount Panorama. 6 wins up on the board, going for 7 today. At the moment, in the pits, the number 24 car. And some
Scotty Taylor and Kevin Kennedy. This is the long partnership that was talking to Evan just 3 laps ago, saying that they were having no trouble at all. Also in the pits, car number 4, the John Sands entry. Now Bobby Morris handed over earlier to Rusty French. Morris is back in the car.
Yes, there's Rusty French. Let's go to Evan Green.
Well, when I spoke to Bobby last time, he was pretty sick. He had been sick in the car, looked very tired. How is he now, Rusty?
I didn't speak to him, but when I got in the car, Bob wasn't the only thing that was sick. I jumped in and went up the first corner, and the brakes went straight to the floor. So I realised that I've had no brakes all the time I've been out in that session, and that's why we've been a bit slow. But I just pulled it in and I checked the brake fluid myself, and the container was empty. So now that we've got some fluid back in the system, we're not going to be able to drive the car any quicker, I don't think, but I think we can maintain that speed for the rest of the race.
You must be pleased with the result all the same. It's been a good effort.
Where are we? Do you know where we are? I don't know what
in 9th place, Evan, 2 laps down.
I think it's...
You're in 9th place, you're 2 laps down.
Oh, that's not bad. Don't tell my sponsors that, or they'll expect it every year.
That's a line I can't follow. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Evan Green. Rusty French. Peter Brock across the top of the mountain in number 25, the dealer team Commodore. We'll get some times for you shortly to see what the gap is between Alan Moffat and Peter Brock. Alan Grice still back in 3rd place.
Has unlapped himself, though. He's now on the lead lap with the 2 front runners.
Well, he had a good finish last year, split the dealer team cars, Alan Grice, to finish in 2nd place. There's the man they still have to beat, though, the man who has conquered Mount Panorama 6 times previously, Peter Brock. A long Conrod straight at Mount Panorama. What an amazing driver this Peter Brock is, to climb into the car, as he did at Sandown, and have a problem with the car. But he's still been able to come back from behind.
Margin between Brock in 25 and Moffat in 43 is 1 minute 52.6 seconds, so it's just as long as it ever was.
We'll see what unravels when we return to Mount Panorama for the 1983 James Hardy 1000. Panorama at Bathurst, we're in lap 95 of the 83 James Hardy 1000. Peter Brock, the leader, 1 minute 54 clear of Alan Moffat in 43. Alan Grice, the next driver. At the moment, we're following Bobby Morris across the top of the mountain after taking over from Rusty French.
He soon found out that Rusty French was right about the car having no brakes. At the end of the first lap out this time, Bobby Morris speared off down the escape road at the bottom of Conrod. Didn't call to the pits, though. I guess he's going to try and survive out there with what brakes he's got, and he continues in the race. Meantime, Peter Brock continues to build that lead over Alan Moffat now that both the lead drivers are back in the respective cars, the dealer team Commodore and the Moffat Mazda. When they went back out on the first lap round, the margin was 1 minute 52. It is now 1 minute 54, so 2 seconds in the last 2 laps.
The Ortex radar, 7 radar, should be able to give us the speed down Conrod Straight this time for Bob Morris in the John Sands Commodore number 4. Picks it up just there. 2:59. Not bad at all. Certainly when you've got a brake problem.
Probably because he's got a brake problem.
Right at the end of Conrod Straight last time, a little quicker. Coming up behind him is the Parsons-Janssen car, the Cadbury Schweppes machine.
Phil Alexander and Ron Gillard in an RX-7 have forced their way into the top 10 on the track. The number 35 car, Takiko entry. So outside of Moffat, it's the only RX-7 showing the flag in the great race for 83 in the top 10 positions.
Is French, David Parsons, just behind Morris. That's the French Morris entry, the John Sands car that we've been following. Back behind them, Peter McLeod in car number 50.
Harrington next in the second STP car, followed by Keogh in the Toshiba Commodore. Then car number 27, Alf Grant and David Selden in the Falcon XD, the top running Falcon in the race, followed.
Oh, that's a move.
Followed by Bobby Morris, rather, in that car number 4, the Sands Commodore. And then in 10th spot on the track, as I mentioned, the Phil Alexander Ron Gillard Mazda RX-7, car number 35.
Well, Morris is trying to get back into the swing of things after taking over, but he's got David Parsons very, very close indeed, and Parsons is trying to fend off McLeod. Morris pulls over and lets them through, and Parsons now has to try and contain McLeod in the slick 50 car, or Bailey rather.
Cullen, who was also looked to be in a lot of trouble earlier, blowing smoke, is still in the race and in fact just tailing on to that trio of cars. There he is, in fact. Warren Cullen still in the run as we watch Bailey go through, hounding Parsons. Once they get onto Conrod Straight, when the power of the V8 opens out, I think he might shake Graham off.
Yes, moving to the outside of Cloud as they go down the straight. Let's have a look at the wins. Automotive Products.
Positions 1 to 5. Brock the Commodore, Moffat the Mazda RX-7, Grice the STP Commodore 3rd, then Parsons in the Cadbury Schweppes car, and Graham Bailey in the Slick 50 Mazda. They're the top 5 now, 6 to 10. Harrington, the second STP car, Keogh in the Toshiba Commodore, Selden and Grant in the XD Falcon, Bobby Morris in the John Sands entry, the Commodore number 4, and Alexander and Gillard, the Mazda RX-7 number 35. The wins scoreboard. A lot of people behind the scenes contributing to information to keep track, and it is difficult. As you can see, we've told you only 3 runners on the leading lap, then a lap down to car number 3, the Parsons Commodore, 2 laps down then to cars 50, 14, 12, 27, 4, 35. And so the wins scoreboard with information coming in from all sources, our own Channel 7 computer sources, Texas Instruments, the Ray Morris scoring system. Talking about Ray Morris, son Bobby, in trouble. The brakes are just no good, son.
Yes, well, Morris went off again up there trying to rejoin the circuit, but they obviously have a major brake problem, and this is not the place to be driving around without brakes.
The last circuit in the world not to have decent brakes.
Is Parsons coming up?
Grice is in the pits, 3rd place getter in the race. The STP lead car just pulling up now. The fuel churn goes in. Grice, of course, staying behind the wheel. The front is up. Tyre change on the front, not the rear, it looks like. Evan Green hurriedly making his way down the pit road to the STP pit bay. He'll soon be able to, although the bonnet's going up, maybe something a little more seriously amiss. Let's take you to Evan Green to find out exactly what's occurring over there.
Well, they're bleeding the brake, Gary. They do have a brake problem. They're adding fluid. Alan's just having a drink. When he completes that, as he pumps away at the brake, obviously they're very short of fluid here. It could be the problem that Colin Bond was referring to, the ultra-wide wheel, allowing the calipers to let the pads off the disc. Alan being told what to do to pump as they try and bleed the system, get any air bubbles out as they add fluid. I won't interrupt here because he's busy at the moment, Alan Grice. Both drinking, he's very hot in there. With the full face helmet on, pumping away on the brake pedal. Alan, have you been without brakes?
Down.
Yeah, I've got none.
I think that'll do for an answer. He hasn't got any. That's about as simple as you can get. Still pumping away to see what the problem is. Fluid pouring out from the overflow on that tube where they're still working on those front brakes. Brakes have been playing a beautiful painting here today, both the heat and the fast rate. The quickest cars have been lapping around 2 minutes 20. The fastest car in the circuit at the moment, by the way, is George Fury in car 15, the turbocharged Bluebird, and had been for the last 2 minutes. Well, they think they've got the brake problem right. There's a firm pedal there now. Alan Grice is going back out again to make the discovery of whether or not he has brakes. He looks a fairly calm man despite the great heat there. There's perspiration all around his eyes. He's just trying to wipe behind the sunglasses that he wears, as you can see, just to try and get some moisture away so he can see. It's a tough business here today. The engine sounds fine. They're just tightening up the last of the nuts on the wheel. The man's lost one. Now he's found the last one, puts it in place with the hydraulic tightener. Arms up, say the job is done, and Alan Grice goes back on the track, leaving a great trail of brake fluid and rubber dust as he accelerates from the pits.
Thank you, Evan Green. Alan Grice rejoins the race. The race leader is still Peter Brock. We'll take a break and return live to Mount Panorama at Bathurst.
Car number 4 is out of the race. The John Sands Commodore, Bobby Morris, without brakes and fatigued in this heat, is out of business and has stepped out of the car. Here's Evan Green.
Rusty French has taken over. He's behind the wheel, strapping himself in. They're working on the brakes, as you can see, just to try and get some pedal up. It's a fearful race for brakes here today with the heat and the pace. And Bob Morris, you may just see him behind the car there with the blue Avon cap on. Bob is exhausted. He's suffering from heat exhaustion. It's a dreadful day here. He's returned to motor racing after 12 months. He's tried with a great intensity of effort, and he is just suffering from heat exhaustion. You can see him there, jaded. He's tried to the very end, but brought the car in and said, I can't go any further, Rusty. Take it over. And Bob Morris, distressed and suffering from heat exhaustion in the pits. Bob, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay now, Evan.
It must be crook out there, particularly when you haven't got brakes.
Well, yeah, it was a bit embarrassing, but no, I think the fumes just got to me again. I felt all right when I got back in the car, but a couple of laps and the fumes got to me and I started being sick again. But I was coming in anyway because the car just didn't have, virtually had no brakes, and it would have been dangerous to stay out. Otherwise, perhaps I would have tried to press on for a bit.
Is Rusty going to try and nurse it to the finish?
Well, I think that's all we can do at this stage. But, besides the brake problem, the rest of the car's good.
It's been a pretty exciting comeback to motor racing for you, hasn't it?
I guess it has been, yeah.
Bobby Morris, back to you, mate.
Thanks very much, Evan Green. Bob Morris out of the race after a second driving stint. Meanwhile,
things a little shaky for Bobby Morris. Let's find out the state of affairs for Australia in the Davis Cup semi-final against France at White City. Just might point out to viewers who were disappointed that we didn't follow the Davis Cup through, having covered the first 2 days live, obviously an impossibility. The clash of dates was known long ago, 12 months ago in fact, but the LTA determined not to change the Davis Cup dates when it was suggested the dates remain the same, and we're doing the best that we can to cover both events for you. Of course, we have the commitment to the great race, the James Hardy 1000, which we could not break. The race leader is Peter Brock in kart 25, and he is galloping away from Alan Moffat in the 43 Mazda at the present time. The lead is 2 minutes and 6 seconds. 25 to 43, 2 minutes and 6 seconds. It's then 1 minute and 42 seconds. That's about a half a lap down to David Parsons in the Cadbury Schweppes Commodore. Alan Grice holding down 4th spot in car number 6, the STP Commodore, also a lap down at the present time, and then 2 laps down to the McLeod Mazda, the second STP car, and Jim Keogh in the Toshiba Commodore. 101 laps have been completed, and the Motorola $500 prize money for laps 75 through 100 have gone to Peter Brock. So he's picked up $1,500 for that bout of prize money so far. 2 minutes and 8 seconds, 2 minutes and 9 seconds, in fact, now is the gap between Brock and Moffat. Let's check the update after 4 hours of the great race.
The Camara's year at Bathurst ended unceremoniously about an hour ago when Mike Bergman and Tony Longhurst had the car in the grass at the top of Mount Panorama. Some splendid driving by David Parsons, bringing the number 3 car up through the field into 3rd place. Trailing, Rusty French and Bob Morris, who were sharing the driving in car number 4. From George Fury in the Nissan Turbo, the site of a race-long duel with Katayama. Fury passing on the outside, but be passed only 3 laps later. Meanwhile, Perkins was starting to stretch the lead in the Marlborough Holden Dealer Team Commodore, number 25. Brock complained the car wasn't handling the best, but one who was complaining even more bitterly was Dick Johnson. Wife Jill looked on as Johnson told us how it felt being passed on the outside by Perkins. Not the way to arrive at the team tent, as Fred Gibson found out, with the turbo fumigating the Nissan headquarters. And the left-hand drive car that perhaps should have been a right-hand drive car. But Katayama climbed out the wrong side and Alan Moffat had to take it over, entering from the wrong side. Then, pulling out, almost a collision between Larry Perkins and Alan Moffat. The Moffat car going back onto the track, but now 25 with Brock in, still leading the big race. 4 laps after taking over, Bob Morris steps from the car. He's had enough. Updating hour 4 of the James Hardy 1000 from Mount Panorama at Bathurst.
There's Brock taking the left-hander and on the way up the mountain once more with 103 laps gone and 60 to go in the James Hardy 1000 for 83, and they are working like demons in the Nissan workshop behind the pit row because both the Bluebirds are back on the track. George Fury at the wheel of car number 15 and Fred Gibson at the wheel of car number 16. They've done a mighty job because they've got something to uphold here today, and they intend to be on the track when the flag falls.
Well, George Fury, as you know, had a gearbox problem. He broke second gear and took 13 laps to have it fixed. With Freddie Gibson, the problem was that the seal went in the turbocharger and they had to fix that. But Gerard Murphy in the Alfa Romeo V6 number 58, Jerry, you've had no trouble at all.
No, Evan, it's been going very well. We have lost 3rd gear, but still we can get it in. But
well, you've got 4 left.
We got 4 left, so there's no problem. It's going very well. It's a nice, easy car to drive. We had troubles with the braking earlier in the week, but now they're sorted out and it's stopping very well. No complaints, really.
This is the car, or the same type of car that won last year's European Touring Car Championship. Shows the difference between the sort of regulations they have in Europe and those that apply here. Would you like to see this standard of racing brought here? Cars that were more standard than we see?
The Group A? Yes, certainly. I think it'll be open up the... we'll see a lot more interesting cars, and I think it'll be open up racing a lot more. I think it'll be great.
Ray Golson, the man out there at the moment, had a lot of experience here, hasn't he?
He sure has. He sure has, Evan. He's going very well. Real well. Yeah, good.
So, a contented Gerard Murphy, the driver of car 58, the Alfa V6. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Evan.